Alvin, one of the deepest, most profound questions that we can ask each other as human beings is there an afterlife? Is there something that will happen to me beyond this physical life? Is the soul immortal? Various ways we can ask the question. I've been troubled and obsessed with this question my whole life. How can we begin to think about the question, is the soul immortal or is there an afterlife?
Is the soul immortal? Now, one way to take that would be like this. Is the soul, like Plato thought, something which is indestructible? It just can't go out of existence. Once it's in existence, that's just it. There's no way in which it's going to go out of existence. No, there aren't any mechanisms for it to sort of just fade away or anything like that. I don't believe that that's true. I'm a serious believer in God, so I think everything depends on God's constant upholding activity. And if it weren't for that conservation or conservative activity on God's part, the whole world would disappear like a candle flame in a high wind, or like a dream upon awakening. So the same would go for the soul. So I don't think the soul is immortal in the sense that it just can't fail to exist. Of course it can. But I do think that human beings, human selves, survive their death, and like any Christian, I think there is therefore an afterlife, that this afterlife goes on indefinitely. That's what I in fact think. Christians sort of traditionally, classically think that there are these two states after death. There's heaven and there's hell. And the people who are chosen by God, or who have faith in God, or accept what God requires them to, they wind up in heaven, others wind up in hell. I'm not so sure that the Bible actually teaches that. There are lots of passages in the Bible that suggest that everybody winds up in heaven. So, and St. Paul says something like, as through one man sin entered the world, so through one man shall all be saved. As through one man all sinned, so through one man shall all be saved. It's the same word, same Greek word in those two occurrences. That suggests that everybody will be saved. Maybe people get second chances, third chances after death, fourth chances, nth chances. There is this novel by C.S. Lewis, The Great Divorce. I don't know if you know that novel, but The Great Divorce. And it starts off like this. There are a bunch of people in a bus in what looks like a British Midlands city on a November evening. It's dark and smoky and gloomy and raining a little bit, and it's pretty miserable. Well, this bus starts off, and all of a sudden it takes off. Instead of staying on the ground, it takes off, and it goes higher and higher. It bursts out into the bright sunshine, blue sky, finally lands at some place, sort of an unknown location, and the people get off the bus. Now, actually, where they've gone to is heaven. They were in hell, they've gone to heaven, and they get invited to stay. Each one gets invited to stay. Most of them don't want to stay. For example, one theologian says, I don't want to stay here. You can't get into good argument about God's existence. Everybody already believes it, Like somebody else said, for the climate, give me heaven, but for the company, give me hell. So most of these people go back. But Lewis's idea is, maybe it's the case that people get posthumous chances to go from hell, if that's where they are, to go to heaven. And maybe they'll accept it, maybe they won't. And maybe it'll be that in the long run, nobody finally turns God down. Everybody finally says, okay.
So that's something called like universal reconciliation or universal salvation?
That's called universalism. And I don't myself quite believe it, but I don't disbelieve it either. I think it's something that a Christian should at least hope for.
How would a non-Christian, someone who has no strong religious commitment, think about the question of the afterlife? Must you have a prior belief in a particular religion to think about an afterlife?
I don't think so. Again, I think there is research on this topic which suggests that people generally are strongly inclined to believe in an afterlife. They're, first of all, strongly inclined to believe that they are not the same things as their bodies, that their bodies could die and dissolve and putrefy and wither away while they continue to exist. And I think, that again seems to be something that's just part of our cognitive nature, to at least look favorably on the thought that we are independent of our bodies and can continue to exist when our bodies don't.
I feel that way, but I don't trust my own feelings.
Well, I don't know what to say. I mean,
why should I trust those feelings?
well, I suppose for the same reason that you trust most of the rest of what you find yourself inclined to believe. I mean, again, you believe in the past, other minds, material objects. Not on the basis of arguments, I would say. You find yourself believing these things. With respect to belief in an afterlife, maybe the belief isn't nearly as powerful as that, but or the inclination to believe, but it's still there. And unless one had some reason to object to it, some powerful argument, or even not very powerful argument from other things you believe, some reason to think it's not in fact so, I guess it seems to me the sensible thing is why should one be any more suspicious of that than of anything else you find yourself by nature inclined to believe?
I am very suspicious. I believe it. I think I believe it, and I'm terribly suspicious of it.
Well, I can understand that. I mean, it's so remote from our everyday life. So, I mean, I believe in an afterlife, but if you ask me, well, what's going to be like? I really don't know much about that, I expect it'll be wonderful, but how in detail will there be rock climbing, for example? It won't be quite the same, presumably, because if you fall, you're not going to get killed.
Takes away a little of the excitement.
So some of the risk is gone, and hence some of the excitement. So, I mean, how will that work? How will any of the things that fill our lives and give our lives meaning, how will those things work? That's not so clear.